The reason we're all here is for our celebrity guest tonight. It's hard to communicate just the how incredible this person is. I just know him just a little bit, but from what little I know, the well-roundedness and the level of execution at which that he lives his life is pretty incredible. Both on the professional side, he's got 3,000 units. On the business side, with his entrepreneurship, with his speaking, with his coaching, and I would say even more importantly, and most importantly, his aspiration to be the best husband and the best father that he can be to his 3 children. Everyone, I'm super stoked to have our celebrity guest here tonight, Mr. Jason Yarusi. Let's give him an outstanding Freedom Chasers welcome. Jason, welcome, brother.
Hey, Trevor. Excited to be here. How's it going?
Oh, it's going really, really good. I've been anticipating this moment of the day since I woke up this morning. So
yeah, well, thank you for that grand entrance. That's great.
For sure. We're super excited to have you, Jason. I want to jump right into things because we have so much ground to cover with your story and everything. And if you could just set the stage for us a little bit, give us the Cliff Notes version of your background and kind of your upbringing and what you got into as far as career industry related events after you finished school.
Sure. So took a very non-linear path from school. So I graduated school with a business degree in finance and decided from there I was going to move to New York City and just start working in bars and restaurants. I didn't want to go into finance at that time, so I started going into that avenue. So I worked in bars and restaurants for the better part of a decade. Ended up working at a really we'll say, really busy outdoor bar. And that led into a lot of energies for me to go and to open up restaurants. I opened up a bar, I opened up and sold a brewery. All that led to early 2011, 2012, Hurricane Sandy had happened, decimated the East Coast. There was a ton of homes that got flooded. And my dad has had a little construction business for the better part of now close to 50 years. He did a very niche business where he actually lifted and moved houses. So he'd actually take the house off the foundation and he would move it down the street. He would move it back into property, and he would also lift them up for flooding reasons. And so that storm happened, and over the course of overnight, he would go from a couple calls a month, right? He was doing maybe like 10 or 12 projects a year to 1,000 calls a day. And so my little brother was working for me in the city. My girlfriend at the time, my now wife, Peely, was working with me and for me in the city. Well, we picked up, moved out from New York City and moved to New Jersey and started helping Dad with the family business. And so we took that business over the course of the next couple of years from, the 10 to 12 jobs to about 250 projects a year. So it just really scaled. Over the course of all this, what really was the eye opener is that every business I was in, from bars, from brewery, from out there into construction, was so time intensive in terms of my time. Now, Peely, so still my girlfriend right now, becoming my wife, she's pregnant with our first kid, and we have no time. If there was 25 hours in a day, if there was 8 days a week, we could use it. We were so busy with the construction, so busy with all the things we were doing, right? We just had no time. So we kept asking, like, how can we get back our time? How can we control our day? And the word that kept coming up in front of us was 2 words: real estate. But like everyone knows here listening is that, it's this very blue ocean, right? You could do house flips, wholesales, Airbnb, tax liens, single family rentals, the whole scope. So we did what we thought was logical. Peely, now pregnant, went out and got a real estate license, and we started finding homes and flipping homes, right? So here we are, we're flipping homes while still doing all this construction work that we have. And what came upon us was that, wow, we actually have less time now doing the flipping and the construction than we had to start. So we're going the wrong direction. And we just kept trying things and just finding dead ends and then going another way. So we were doing, really good with the flipping. We were doing fine. It was good, right? And then we started doing some wholesaling, and that was fine and good. But we just kept having this part where it was very transactional. It wasn't a part that we could pull ourselves out of it. And the construction was such a niche business. You could think about, we're lifting homes, someone's most important asset, right? High risk business, high insurance business. We had the experience through my father, my brother, that we had to be so active in these projects, we couldn't source anything out. So we kept having to be involved. We couldn't get away, and we want to get our time back, and we're going every which way but getting our time back. Well, Peely meets someone at a real estate meeting just like this who is doing out-of-state rental. So we said, oh, okay, let's see if we can tip our hat and try that. So we brought, instead of buying a single family home, here we are in New Jersey, right? We ended up buying a couple duplexes that were out in Indiana. And what that did is that forced my hand to make sure we had teams in place, right? I had to put contractors in place. I had to put leasing agents in place, property managers in place. I had to do all the things to empower other people to handle the projects, because lo and behold, I couldn't run out there and do all the things and get myself involved and basically
Yeah.
take my time doing that. Well, what happens here is that project gets leased out. Lo and behold, we start getting rent coming in. Rent now starts to cover our expenses, cover the mortgage, and cash flow starts existing. So I look at this and I say, you know, that this model is very interesting, because just like the restaurants, I had a very small restaurant and a very large restaurant. Well, if I had a duplex and a couple duplexes, it wasn't really going to tip the needle enough to make a difference in our life. And having 20 or 50 duplexes just seemed like a logistical nightmare. So we
Yeah.
just kept asking, like, what was the next question? And I came up on a podcast where someone was buying an apartment building. And that was that like light bulb moment. I was like, I get it, right? You buy a 50 unit, 100 unit, 200 unit, you can bake in all the economies of scale. Because I take this back to the restaurant days, is that I had a 12-seat restaurant. I had a restaurant that you got 5,000 people come. It was an outdoor place, right? They were basically both the same process, right? And mainly dinner's the same time, like 6 to 8, 5:30 to 7:30, depending. And in the 12-seat restaurant, I couldn't get economies of scale, and I could only turn that table so many times. Well, the same thing with the apartments. I could understand that I could basically treat it like a business the larger it was, where the smaller properties was subservient to me having to run it like a mom and pop shop. So we sold off all those duplexes, dove all in onto the large multifamily aspect to learn everything we could about the process, and went from, I think we sold those in 2015 or 2016, and within the year that we learned, we went into finding a market that was Louisville, Kentucky, where we started. I was in New Jersey still at that time, and we brought our first 94 unit, and that was in 2017. That was the first of, we'll say, circa about 30 transactions to date, for which we're in 7 states now. Primarily, though, I'm here in just south of Nashville in Murfreesboro, primarily here in and around Nashville, down in Atlanta are 2 primary markets. And of those 30 plus deals, we've gotten full cycle on 14 of them now.
I love that. I love that. That was a nice summary of your real estate story. I want to back up a little bit, Jason, and unpack some critical moments there. When you decided to make the shift from single family, from residential to multifamily commercial real estate, there's probably several people in the Zoom already that are in that exact position. It's like, hey, I'm looking to make the shift. I'm looking to scale up. I want to go from residential to commercial, specifically focus on multifamily. Could you share some advice based off your experience of making that transition that folks in the Zoom tonight could apply to themselves when they're considering making the shift from residential to multifamily?
Well, it just comes down to why you want to do it. I have a lot of friends that do tremendously well in the single family space, right? And so typically when you're doing something, you're either running from something you don't want, or you're running to something that you do want, right? And so for me, I just had no time, and I wanted to get out of this pattern where I just kept doing things that just made me subjectively busy just for the sake of being busy, right? So that was the draw to multifamily. Now, when we went with multifamily, many times, and especially in a part, people want to start small for the sake of starting small, right? But I equate it to, like, if you want to go ride a bike, you don't say, I'm going to go learn swim first, right? The small property, although it seems safer, well, the larger property gives you more benefits, more economies of scale, and it's also treated better, right? So if you go for a 5 unit, right, 2 vacancies put you at 60% occupied. Where if you go for a 100 unit, 2 vacancies barely tips the needle. So a lot more of the property is put back on you the smaller you go. And if you're just doing that for the sake of comfort, it really doesn't gain you any benefit. You're going to do the same steps if you go for a 10 unit that you're going to do for a 40 unit. And the lenders are going to look more proficiently on a property that has more revenue, has more income potential, then that's going to allow you to basically afford the loan, right, from a larger property. It's going to look into a better light, and it's going to be less off the eyes of you. Also, you'll be able to push the needle more. That first property right there was 94 units. We did a water savings plan on that. I think we knocked down the water bill about 30%. And at the time, basically the cap rate, took the value up in the property like 350,000, right? That happened on a property that was 94 units, but if it was a 2 unit or 4 unit, right, doing a water savings program or go and change the toilets, add in aerators, it wouldn't move the needle to add the value. So you can do a lot with a larger property. and run it like a business where you'll get more professional partners. The smaller properties, and you'll still see it today, if you have a 6 unit, 10 unit, 12 unit, it's harder to find more professional partners. And that can be everything from your property managers to your vendors, right? The larger properties, they're more professional outfits. So you can find people that are better partners for you as well that you can build into as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because I get asked that quite often. My first deal was a larger asset, and most people struggle with going from, jumping into real estate and using a large multifamily apartment complex as their first investment asset as a general partner. So, I mean, it took a lot of mindset reset that I had to go through in order to do that. But I'm glad you addressed that. I've heard a lot of people say, yes, I want to go into commercial multifamily, but I think I'll start with a 6 unit first. And there's no right or wrong, but
your mind is comfortable, right? So, for most, it's like we can go where your mind wants to go and build a plan into it. So if you want to do a 6 unit, fine. There's a ton of power in that. There's a ton of people who win with those. If you want to do a 50 unit, that can be done too. We just have to look at where you've come from, and it usually sets the stage of where you want to go. So it is mindset, because there's all potential on all sides of it, right? But you don't have to do one for the next, right? Because many times I'll get the question like, well, if you started over, would you just jump to multifamily? And I would say no, because everything I learned from what I didn't want was learned and groomed through the stage of doing other sides of real estate. That's just what I did. But my journey doesn't have to be your journey.
Hmm.
That's right. That's right. Jason, follow along this vein of thought here. Part of what we like to do to help our community members is, hey, if you're starting your real estate, if you're starting your multifamily real estate journey, we want to help you get your foot in the door, and what specifically that looks like for you based off your current life stage, based off your current responsibilities, based off the current time and energy and bandwidth you have to dedicate to commercial real estate. Because, I mean, quite frankly, a lot of our community members, they still have their W-2 jobs. They still have their families that they're taking care of. What advice or what kind of insight or what exercise would you recommend for people in that kind of space that have limited time, limited bandwidth because of personal and professional responsibilities that are already in place, to try to figure out, hey, where can I get my foot in the door to at least start my commercial multifamily real estate journey?
Good. Well, my bulldog, I'm at the office and she's been huffing and puffing around me for her. She's finally walked in the other room. So we'll have some peace and quiet for a moment.
All good,
So
brother, all good. I'm
piece
just
of
waiting for
this
my
is that,
kids to bust down my door at any
there you
second.
go.
So
There you go. Honestly, when you look at your time, like the W-2 is it's something you can really use, because you forget, like you jump out and now you don't have a W-2, right? You're less bankable when you go to banks, right? Especially in the interim, right? So in this part, like I get it, like some may want, but like you don't have to just to have to, right? But when you look at this, you want to look at, if you're going to do something like syndication, right, where you will basically pool funds with other people to go and buy a larger property, there's a lot of hats that have to be worn, right? You have lead generation, you have due diligence, you have asset management, you have underwriting, you have capital raising on the construction side, you have loan guarantor, right? So there's a lot of different roles. So you have to look at this as like, where can you be of benefit? Right? Where can you be of benefit to the deal, and what do you want to do? Right? So how can you bring value to another partnership? Because if your time is limited here, well, what can you do most proficiently with your time? And there is two things that are really going to drive every part of the deal. It's going to be sales and basically leads, right? Leads and money, right? Because if you have one, you're of value. If you have the other, if you have value. If you have both of them, then you are the driver, right? You're the driver of all deals, right? So if you have to say, okay, where can I put my energy to get the most bang for my buck, right? It's leads and money. Now, when you get the project and you get it going and you have a plan, right? Asset management, they're going to drive the project. But if you're going to come in there and your strong suit is asset management, you need somebody else to do some role or some action for you to have a role. So if your time is limited, right, you have to say, well, what do you like doing? What are you good at doing? And where can you add value to a partnership? But you do want to be something on the front end that can help push you forward to your goals.
that's really good.
And for you, what was that? Are you the underwriter and Peely does the deal? Does she
So
bring in the deals? Is that how it works?
initially, we wore all the hats. And what Peely does is she's very good out there on investor sides and investor education and investor relations. And so I was wearing the other hats and she would do that, right? As you grow, you become the linchpin, right? You become the reason you're not moving forward, because if she's talking to investors and I'm underwriting deals and no one's talking to brokers, right? If I'm talking to brokers, right, and she's working on investor education. No one's handling asset management. So now, we have a team here at Yarusi Holdings, and they help support us as we go forward for all different roles, from everything from admin to asset management to investor relations to, marketing. We have the team here that now helps support us, because there was, we did 3 or 4 deals that way. And there becomes that point where you're the stopgap in your growth forward.
Definitely. Jason, could you unpack a little bit more about your first deals, 90+ units, right? I mean, was it just you guys did it on your own? Was it a JV syndication? Was it off market, on market? Could you just unpack that a little bit for us?
How did you raise capital for it?
Sure. It was a syndication, 94 units at the time. I think we brought it for, so the story of it was that we had someone suggest to us in the beginning that you find leads from all ways. Like 70% of your leads you're going to find through broker connections. The other 30% you're going to find in all different ways. And one way that we found a number of leads is that we've gone to property managers that we like and are going to be on our team, right? We've always kept in their ear to keep us in mind if they hear of anything happening, right? And so many times the property managers are very undesirable role, right? Because if you do well, the people sell the building. If you do poorly, you're fired, right? Well, in between, right? If they knew of a group that the father who had built the properties had passed away. He was like in his 90s. So the kids had the properties, who we'll call them kids, but they were like in their 50s and 60s. So they have this 94 unit complex, and they're living out of state, and they're like, what are we doing with this thing, right? So they put it out there, through the network that they want to sell this building. And I think they had like a asking price of like 3.2 million, right? Which sounds amazing for today's terms, but at that time of where cap rates and everything else, I went in there and offered 2.1 million. And so at that time, they countered back at 3.2 million. I said, well, that's not really a counter. And I just said, okay, thank you. So we went our way, and what we did is we were tracking properties as we were making offers. Well, a couple months went by. Hadn't heard anything about it, and I just followed back up on it. And what had happened over time, and I think a lot of other people had come in with very similar offers, and they had in their mind this price where we're just someone that told them like that's the price. And I went in there, I think I raised my price like $50,000. So imagine we're very far apart. Well, within a matter of like 3 or 4 hours, we had a counter back, and their 3.2 offer or asking had come down to 2.6 million. So, $600K drop in a matter of a couple months. And now as a start of the negotiation, I think we closed it at 2.3 million. Well, what we had been doing all along is that we basically created, we made a one-pager. We said, okay, here's a one-pager of the deal, the avatar deal that we're looking for. 75 to 125 units, BC assets built between 1970 and 2005 in Louisville, Kentucky, in the South Side, Southeast submarket, right? And this is how it would structure, right? It's going to be a syndication, and people who just invest, here's the typical type of returns that we will look to have for the deal. So we were telling our network, right? Because here I am, I come from the construction world, the bar world, the brewery world. My friends all know me as that. Well, here we are now, we're doing multifamily syndication, and we had to go tell them and educate them first about what we were doing. Because when you're starting out, a lot of that is the education process. Because typically a lot of your friends and family, maybe they've seen flipping shows, but most of their money and most of their investments is stocks, bonds, mutual funds, traditional, right? So this was a new discovery for them. So we went there, we explained, why we're really excited about this, what we were going to be doing for this, why we were looking in certain markets like in Louisville, Kentucky, and then how it worked. And we'd give it time to germinate with them so they could go take this back. And we maybe will have 1 or 2, 3-year conversations. But what this allowed to do is that we went and were able to get a lot of commitments that weren't real. They weren't giving us money, but they were giving us the confidence. Like, hey, listen, you find a deal, I'm in for 25, or I'm in for 50, right? Or I'm in for 35,000, right? So lo and behold, we had raised about $1 million, on paper, right? From our connections, from our network. So as we were going out, simple math, if we could raise $1 million, we could probably look at properties of about 3 million, maybe $3.5 million, right? So we were going out there offering on these properties. And so when we got one under contract, we raised, 750, 800,000, right? But we did that in a day because we had done all the pre-work to basically prime our investors. So they were ready when this offering came back. So we said, hey, we're looking for this property. And then we just brought them back the real life version of the property. So we did that. I think we partnered it with we started with a Fannie loan or we started with a Freddie loan. I forget which it was at the time. And then we cashed out refi with the opposite, about 15 months in of that.
Wow. That's really good. That's really good. And Jason is dropping some crazy nuggets right here in his story, and we don't have time to highlight everything that he's dropping. But first of all, his vocabulary, pay attention to his vocabulary. He's using the multifamily lingo. And if you're having trouble grasping some of these concepts, that's okay. That's why we have three other Zooms that run in the Multifamily Freedom Chasers community. That's all free, so you can catch the lingo. And then also, just as far as strategy is concerned, he's dropping some insane strategy if you're looking for your first deal. But Jason, something that is kind of rolling around in my brain on maybe more the personal side of you, because I'm thinking, okay, you started off in bartending, all right, and now here you are, an incredible, successful multifamily real estate investor. You do coaching, you do speaking, you have all these things going on in addition to your family. And typically, the people that have that trajectory of success, there's a point in time that they can trace back to, and they say, hey, this was the moment where everything started to change for me, whether it was a crisis, whether there was some sort of decision back against the wall. There was a specific moment where that they can point back to, and their trajectory was altered that set them on the trajectory that they are now today. Do you have some sort of story like that happened with you?
There's a lot. I mean, as you go through things, like you just get to points in your life where like, okay, either this is it, right? But like nothing's going to change if nothing changes, right? And you have a lot of those facts in life where like, and many times, right? You think about it, like we all want different results by doing the same thing. And we're like, well, why isn't life better? Right? Like, why aren't I getting this thing? Why aren't I having that success? Why aren't I doing this? But we're doing the exact same thing, right? So the patterns in our life are exactly the same, right? So I mean, I go back like right before I moved out of the bar world. Like, I was not happy with being in the bartender world. Like, it just was what it was. I was working late nights. Like Peely and I used to work. We would work till like 6 a.m. and walk out. You ever be in the dark and then walk out into the light? And like it's a crazy experience. But imagine seeing like most people in the world going to work, and that's like how you end your day, right? And that was a lot of our life. And I remember I was riding home on a bike one night across Manhattan, and I got hit by a car. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, right? And I got thrown out, and it was just one of these parts. I wasn't even with Peely at that time. It was before that, with prior girlfriend. And it was just like one of those parts where like the only thing I could think back was like, shoot, I have to go back to work because this is like how I make my living. And it was like that eye-opening moment. Like the next day, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm either going to make a change or I'm just going to be patterned to this life. And the life is just unpredictable, right? And I'm driven to a point that I have to work each day, right, to make ends meet by just doing something where, a lot of things are outside of my control. And that's fine. Like, if you want to work at W-2, it's nothing against you. Like, some people, like, that's something they like, but I find I'm more at risk when I'm putting in somebody else's hands. And I'd rather risk and put on myself, right, potential outcome for my future, because at least I can look back and say, okay, I put it on me, right, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and then I've pivoted as needed, right? Like that's why I've done things that have gotten me to the right way, and then as we found multifamily, we've grown into this, and we've gotten better as we've done it, right? Because we found how to do it better, how to perform better, how to get better, right? How to do these investments better as we've grown into it. But something like that changes because I just say, okay, this is the pattern my life's been on. And I can only be upset at me for the results, right? I have to take back control, right? I can blame all these other external things. I can say, oh, it's the weather, or it's my upbringing, or it's just, my parents didn't have a good relationship with money, or, my dad was in his rough job, or, like I didn't go to this college, or I'm not around this. You can blame a million things. But if you get back to it and just get to the core sense of just being self-aware about yourself, you ask the question, okay, like, okay, this is where I am. This is where I am right now. What are the steps I've done? Okay, if I keep doing those steps, I can't think and can't be surprised if I get the same result. So I had to start changing things. So I started doing things like getting up earlier, right? And like, it wasn't a perfect math, but I started getting up earlier each and every day. And especially as, I started to have a young family, and we were outside the bar world, we used to work a lot late at night because that's what we were patterned to, and that's what we were accustomed to. Well, okay, you have kids that are, newborns and our points. They're not going to say, oh yeah, you're tired. Why don't you sleep in? Right? There's like that NyQuil commercial, like, you're not feeling good. Like, oh, no worries. Why don't you just hang out? Right? So I started changing the narrative. Like, I had to take back control of my life, and I did that by starting to get up early. So I started getting up at 4:32 a.m., 4:32, 1, go, and I would just get up. And I would do that. I would get up, put water in my face, go down, make coffee, meditate, workout, right? Well, what I would do is I would create wins in my day when the rest of the day was just going to be unpredictable. So I'd get up, and by that time, I was up before the world, get wins out of my way, right? And then on that front, start my day. And what happens there is I started to create a routine that it was the win I would have in the day that I knew I would get, right? And it was on me to get that win, because then Peel can get up, she can have her time, we can have time with the kids, and then we can go on our way. And if the day started and went in a fashion that was, you know, chaotic or whatever, no problem. I'm ready for it because I'd already gotten the control of my day out of the way.
I
That's
like that.
amazing. So it sounds like you've always had the mindset of an entrepreneur. You've always owned businesses in some fashion, and multifamily is just another business. For people who are brand new to this, completely brand new, what is one of the biggest faulty paradigms that you found through coaching, and what advice do you have to give to folks from a mindset perspective to be successful in?
We usually create like roadblocks that are speed bumps, and we think that it's like stepping off like a 10-story building, right? Like, and usually it's the premise of the goal. The goal becomes so big that it becomes elusive, that, you know, we forget to take like the first step. Because usually we spend all this time like manifesting this perfect plan in our minds. And what happens, right, is that, you know, it's like the Mike Tyson thing. Everybody has a perfect plan until they get punched in the face, right? It's that part of like, you take the first step, and it usually leads you to three things, right? So I have a goal, right? And I'm thinking like, I need this perfect plan. Well, like maybe I should just take a step. Well, if I take that step, I'm either going to be completely in the wrong direction. Like, okay, don't go that direction, go the opposite way, right? Or you're going to be kind of in the right direction, but not completely, right? So you say, okay, well, I'm kind of in the right way, but I got to pivot, or you're on the right track. And that usually gets you on the road to uncover new questions to get to new answers. But usually what happens is that we sit back and we wait because you just want the plan to be perfect. And what it usually keeps us is like the perfection is the way that we don't get started. So we never take action. We scare ourselves from actually starting. Or by the time we start, our perfect plan isn't right. And so then we stop again. It's like, oh, I knew it wouldn't work, right? But you have to, everything I've gotten in life is every time I sought the answer, I've never gotten anywhere, because it's always been that if I can figure out the question to ask, right, and a better question, then I get the answer. It's not the answer I'm missing, it's the good question. And when I get to the fact to uncover the good questions, well, what happens? I get further along where I want to go, because I get better answers in my life.
I like that. I think there's some quote out there that says, you know, 50 or 70% of solving any problem is asking the right question.
Oh, 100%. And that's always a part, is that like, it's usually nothing to do. Like, cause like I sometimes don't know what answer I should be seeking. I just need the question. Right. And so many times here, you know, in the real estate journey, you learn new things by just getting to the right person. Because if you take the first no, you're never going to get anywhere. But typically, in a lot in this world, like especially, you know, here with multifamily, a lot of times maybe we'll deal with government faction or other part right there. Their job is like, maybe they're just busy. They're just going to say no, because that's the first start, right? But sometimes it's no because they don't know. Sometimes it's no because they don't want to help you, or sometimes it's no because they're not the right person. So if I believe there's a yes, I'm just going to keep asking until I get the yes. And 95% of the time, there's a yes out there. I just haven't found the right person to get it from.
I love that. I love
Amazing.
that.
And apply that to raising equity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another part, you know, like if you're out there raising money, actually was speaking to someone today, I was like, don't be afraid of the no. Like the no is good. I would rather have a no or a yes than a maybe. I'd rather have the no right away, because listen, like it's not right for you right now. Fantastic. But you can also figure it out as you get going, is that you're going to have no more no's more than you'll have yeses to begin. But if you can start tracking, oh, cool, it takes me 5 no's to get a yes. Well, then you're excited about a no. You're like, great, I got 5 out of the way. There's a yes, 5 of the way. There's a yes, 5 of the way. And then it becomes 4, right? But you can track it instead of being disappointed by the no. And the no usually has nothing to do with you. It usually has to do like not the right time for them. They just have other money and other investments. They don't like the market. Rarely ever you. You bet.
Jason, you've coined this term in a pre-huddle. It came out, the 100-mile mindset. Could you tell us the background and where that came from, and what exactly is the 100-mile mindset, and how does it apply to multifamily investing?
You know, that gets back to a lot of talking about taking that first step. So I started running, you know, kind of when I was in New York City, like I played sports growing up, and there wasn't a lot of friends, you know, that did sports still in New York City. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna start running. So I just started running. I put my sights on a marathon. So I did the New York City Marathon. That was I don't know, 2008, right? So I started doing a bunch of marathons and, just doing them, and I was repetitious. And then 2018, maybe I came upon ultra marathons, which is typically anything that's longer than a marathon. So like, say 30 miles, right? Well, I came upon a 100-mile race and I was like, okay, I'll do that. However, when you go to train a marathon, if you've done a marathon, there's typically like a format, like a marathon race, right? And so like, oh, here's your marathon training package. And over the course of like 12 or 16 weeks or 8 weeks, you run a certain amount of miles per week, and maybe closer to the marathon, you'll run like 2 20-mile races. So in my mind, I was like, I can't see it that a training plan for a 100-mile race is to run 2 80-mile runs prior to the race. I was like, that just seems crazy. So I got back to it. I was like, okay, I have no idea how to train for this. So all I know is that I'm just going to run every day. So I got up and I ran 6 miles every single day. So right in the morning, I would get up, so it's raining, it's snowing, it's 100 degrees, and my foot hurts, I'm sick, and just whatever. I just did it every day. Because what I knew is that I could control that. Because at points in your life, you can control how you show up, but not every day is going to be perfect. And really, in truth, most days are going to be perfect. So as the race came up, I was like, okay, I'm going to start this race. And if I think at the start that I have to run 100 miles, it's going to scare me back, right? Like I'm on that 10-story building again. And I'm like, oh, forget it. Like, how am I going to run 100 miles? But let me just get out there and let me just get through mile one, right? Let me just run to the first aid station, the first drink station. That's about 5-6 miles. Let me just get there and I'll just kind of figure it out, right? So I'd get there. I'm like, okay, I'm here. Okay, let me just run another 5 or 6 miles, right? Okay, let me just do that, right? So I do that. And now I'm here. Okay, let me just run to another one and we'll just kind of see what happens, right? And I just kept doing that. Okay, let me run another 6 miles to the next one. Let me just run another 5 miles to this. Okay, let me just run to the bridge. Okay, and every time like my mind was like, you sure you want to do this? Well, let me just run to the hill. Let me just run to the hill and I'll kind of figure it out when I get there, right? And maybe it'll be another 500 steps or maybe another 200 steps. Let me just run to that next train station. Okay, let me just do this again, right? And lo and behold, after the course of this, I would just say, let me just run to that next spot. And if I want to stop or I want to do something different, then I'll just figure it out. And just did it. And lo and behold, I'm at the end of 100 miles running a series of 5-mile races, right? And if you think about it as your goal, most of the time when you start our goals, we have this granular goal, right? But we don't know how to get there because we're not breaking off and really compartmentalizing it of how it needs to be done. So I ran 100 miles in the course of a bunch of series of little races. And that's how we treat our goals. And if you think of your goals like that, you're going to find that the evolution of your completing your goals becomes a lot more realistic because you spend all your time in your journey, right? I crossed the 100-mile marker within a course of a second, but I spent, 20 hours on the race. And that's us in the terms of our goals, right? We get so locked up in the goal itself that we forget about the journey. And as you're on the journey, you're putting all the work into the journey. And that's where you should really be focused on because the journey is up, down, sideways, left, right. It's all in between. Right? But that's the course, and that's where you're going to spend all your time. And if you do that, you're going to find that you're going to surpass your goals, and your goal is just going to be a mile marker, and then you're going to be on to the next journey. Where we get lost is that we think the journey is like, and you think of this for anything, like I'm going to make $1 million, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, right? We put so much emphasis on the goal, we forget the goal is just like, it's just 1 mile marker. Because after that, life just continues to go on, right? You lose 30 pounds. Okay, great. So what next? You lose 10 more pounds, you live a life like that. Okay, you make $1 million. Okay, does time stop? Like you just go live in a not like what happens, right? So if we can spend more time in the journey of why you're going through that journey and what you need to do, you find the results that pop up or everything you're looking for because the energy is put exactly where it needs to be on the journey and not so much on the goal.
That's really, really good because
Very
even
profound.
when I think of my goals, right, the big picture goals, I know for some people, I think they get fired up about it, but for me, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. And when there's an overemphasis on the goal, then there's that crushing feeling of like, my goodness, how in the world am I going to get there? That's why I appreciate so much what you said, because there needs to be a recalibration of where our focus is. It needs to be on the journey and those mini mile markers, right? That lay out the journey and just breaking it up in smaller bite-sized pieces and just actionable steps every single day. And to me, that's where the real invigoration comes in. I think that's a part of what you were explaining too, is that, hey, the journey is what's amazing because you reach the goal, then it's what's next, right? It's the journey that's the fun part. It's the journey that's the invigorating part. It's the journey that's sorry, I'm getting myself fired up here, Jason, because you got me activated, bro. It's the journey that's going to foster growth and development personally and professionally. Anyway, okay, sorry.
I'll give you one tie, because a lot of people here are either buying their first or their next, right? Like,
Yeah.
for us, people are like, well, what's your goal? You want like X amount of units? I'm like, we don't really put the emphasis on that. We put stuff on like, we want to do a deal a quarter. And with the deal a quarter, we have to have so many connections to get so many opportunities in front of us to be able to underwrite so many deals, to be able to underwrite and put out so many LOIs that can lead to a contract, right? So if you put your deal like, this year I want to get my first deal, like I guarantee, sure, that's gonna happen. Like, but you can't control when that deal like comes to you. You can't control like, oh, I got the deal, right? But you can control like, how many conversations am I having, right? How many opportunities am I having? How many brokers am I meeting? How many leads are being sent to us? How many deals are being underwritten, right? How many opportunities for us to make an offer are out there? You can control that, right? Because you can put the energy there. And when you do that, you find the result you want. And getting a deal is exactly what you're looking for.
Love it. Love it.
Jason,
I was gonna say, if you got, I'm assuming you're about to fire away another question, right?
I did.
Good.
Did you want me
I
to
just
put these
wanted to-
links?
Well, I was just gonna say, just give the audience a heads up. Whenever you finish with your question, Iffy, and Jason's response, let's open it up for some Q&A for about 10 or 15 minutes, if that's cool.
Okay. Awesome. Jason, I absolutely love your mindset. I love the fire and the energy that you bring. In case you didn't know, yours is one of the first videos I watched in my journey. You have this free underwriting video that's out there, and that blew my mind. My question is this: 14 cycles. Do you have any, let's see, one of my mentors, Rod Cleef, he doesn't call them mistakes, he calls them seminars. Do you have any seminars that you would like to share with our ecosystem here? Because we tend to see a lot of the successes and the good sides, of multifamily, and it can be a grueling journey. So through all your 14 cycles, has any deal gone bad? Has a partnership gone bad? Or what seminar would you like to share with us?
No deals gone bad, no partnerships gone bad. The thing is, like, there's been unexpected things. Like, you had COVID come up, right? You had a lot of eviction lag on properties, and that's been parks. It throws off your business plan. We've had construction run over on projects. We've had, draws get delayed by lenders, right? We've had, sewer lines that we scoped, break on properties. We had a lift station go down on one. So things happen, right? But what you need to do is surround yourself with a team that can help support the energy, right? So the second property, right? This is a property one full cycle on. We went out, full inspection, everything inspected, had a lift station, which means that the roads were built up higher than the sewer line of property. So you actually had a pump that would lift up, with sewer up to meet the new sewer system, right? Fully inspect everything, good to go. I think we're a month into the property. The lift station goes down, right? Shuts off, takes out water to the entire building. It was manufactured. I think it was a Chinese manufactured part, and they're like, oh, so we won't be able to get this for 3 months. Like, what? So you can't get the water down in the building for 3 months, guys. So okay, what are other options, right? This is where like you have to find a yes, right? Well, luckily we had someone on our team that I think it was Kohler is a group, or I'm blanking. It's been a minute. Zoller, right? Well, Zoller ended up being a company in Louisville, right? And so Louisville they were able to come out there and put in a basically re-engage or re-engineer a new one that would fit, and we had to take out the whole cage and do a lot more work than we just had the part. We were able to get the water back on in less than 36 hours. So it could have been a monumental event that was solved by having the right team in place and having the right steps in place for something that we thought we had done all of our pre-inspection for, and we thought we had done all the right steps, and still didn't absolutely go the right way, right? So we actually were able to get it done by having the right people on the team to get it done.
Gotcha. Awesome. Guys, proximity has been reduced for you. Raise your hands if you have a question. We are in the presence of a very seasoned and an amazing operator. So if you have questions, raise your hands. This would be your opportunity to ask, to learn from Jason. Jason, we've been putting in your links in the chat for how people can reach you. I know you've talked about the types of the ideal asset that you're looking for your portfolio. I believe you mentioned B2C assets, 75 to 150. There was a certain price point. Is it the Southeast and Southwest you're buying?
No, so we're just down here in the Southeast, and right now, pretty much all forward looking, we're in and around Nashville. We've really been honing back. I have some member deals and some other ones with some of our mastermind members in a couple other markets, but our energy here in house is really in and around Nashville. And to say that, like, we're just buying Nashville and South, which encompasses where I am in Murfreesboro. We're not going east to Knoxville. We're not going west to Memphis. So we're keeping very specific, and that would probably be a good tip for a lot of people here, is that you don't need 100 deals, like, especially if you're like a wholesaler or something like that, and you need like volume, right? With multifamily, you could do a ton with just one project, right? You can do a lot. And so to think that you need to have so much deal flow to get to your comparable deal, I'd rather look at 10 deals and get two than look at 100 and maybe find the one. Because when you're looking at 100, you don't know what you're looking at, especially if you're in multiple markets. And so we stay really engaged to our core market and allows us to say no a lot, which gets us to the yes a lot quicker.
That's really good advice. Really good advice. Really honing down and getting clarity on the buy box. Okay, let's take some questions.
Yeah, we have some
Chaya,
hands.
I'm going to ask you to unmute. I apologize if I said your name incorrect. Is it Chaya or Chaya?
It's Shia.
Shaya. Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies, but thank you for joining tonight.
Ooh.
Fire away your
Thank you
questions.
for
We're glad you're here.
Okay, so I'm actually really trying to learn about multifamily. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is your suggestion for like education? Like, how can I learn? You know what I'm saying? Because like I feel like I'm learning, but like I need to know how to like analyze a deal, like, you know what I'm saying? Like what knowledge what skills should I be learning, and where do I get that kind of knowledge, basically, if you get my question?
Yeah, well, you're here at a meetup tonight like this, and there's a lot of free resources that come. They do these calls a lot, and they're going into the subjective parts. Right now, I guess the question is, like, there's a lot of roles. Like, do you want to underwrite deals? Is that like something that you want to learn, or would you rather talk and get more front forward on the brokers and bankers, or even talking about capital raising? So it really comes down to what interests you. Then next, I would look for things that are specifically to multifamily. So like here, we talk a lot of multifamily. There's podcasts that are very specific to multifamily. And that's what I did when I was transitioning. I put the blinders on, so I wasn't like learning about flipping or wholesaling and having all these things. I went really highly focused into the multifamily world to see and watch things that were very particular to multifamily. And that could be everything that you can go on things like YouTube and watch people underwrite deals, right? There's a lot of free resources out there. So, and I'm sure, Trevor and Iffy, they have free resources here where they show you different things in a lot of these meetups. So I would just engage in specific multifamily oriented things. And then from there, take what you like and take what interests you, and then dig deeper on that. There's a ton of financial modeling courses out there if you really do want to focus on underwriting. There's a ton of reviews where you'll see people underwrite deals. And then I would go on some of the broker sites, and you don't have to be fully engaged to talk with the brokers, but many times there's offering packets on those brokering sites, even if the deal works or doesn't work for you, that you can just start reading those offerings. And on that front, you can get an idea of how an offering looks, and then note down anything that makes sense and anything that doesn't make sense as a question. And then you can go and maybe bring it to a group like this and ask questions about that. That'd be a good starting point. You have a ton of resources from there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But my question is, don't we all need to learn how to underwrite a deal? Like, isn't that how we decide if the deal is good or not? Like, that's my question.
And this isn't directed to you, but some people just aren't good at underwriting.
Oh.
And so from that fact, you do want to understand the process of what's being shown in the underwriting, but you may not be the underwriter, right? And that it may speak to anybody, because underwriting is part science and part art, right? You have to go and use the data you have to drive the analysis forward, but you also have to understand how to make assumptions based on the market, based on the property, based on comparables, based on a business plan, right? So you do want to understand the language within the underwriting, what it's showcasing. So you can look at it and say, oh, the vacancy is 55% right now, and you're going to now cut it down within 1 month to 5%. Or, hey, how are you going to turn 100% of the units by month 6 when everybody's on a lease, right? So you'd want to look at it to understand that the model that someone's doing does or doesn't make sense. And you can also speak to it to your partners, but you don't necessarily have to be the one doing the underwriting.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Jason,
You have a lot of different roles. And so sometimes people will be good at some roles, and sometimes they'll be good at others. And you typically, as you get back to it, have to understand where your strengths are. There are some people that, you know, like Peely can underwrite, but she doesn't want to do it. Like that's not what she wants to be doing. She would rather be on she'll sit on the phone with an investor for like 3 hours, just talking.
Okay.
Right?
But like, okay. Thank you.
Chad, thank
Jason,
you
do
so
you
much.
still
That
run
was a
the
really
mastermind?
good question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, this is just a follow-up to our question. Do you still run a mastermind?
We do. Yeah. We have the 7-figure multifamily
I
mastermind.
wanted you to talk about it. If that,
Sure.
yep.
So
So
you
that people, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so we I think we have a mastermind. There's a 7-figure flipping, which is the parent company. So it's one of our partners, Bill Allen. Part of that is we opened up the sister company or the side by company that's 7-figure multifamily. So I think we're 2.5 years. We have about 75 businesses in there. You know, just like this room, there's people that come from all walks of life. You know, there's of course there's a partner company that's flipping, so a lot of flippers who want to make the transition. There's a ton of people that come in from the military, a ton of people come in from W-2 jobs that are just trying to make the leap. And some have done small multifamily and want to go large. Some have done no real estate and want to find their first multifamily. But, you know, we had a group do, 600 units last year. We had a ton do, the first deal, a ton do their second deal. And what happens over time is that they come in and many times people are gung-ho, they want to do it by themselves. And they find like, oh, there's so much to do. And we say, yeah, that's true. But here are these 3 other people that have like-kind energies, right? And you can partner up and pair your energy, pair your focus. And we see that steamrolls to get them the energy going so they can make the results that they want happen a lot quicker.
Well said. Well said. Let's go to Van here. Van, what's your question? Great to see you again. Fire away.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Jason, I have a question for you. You say you come from the hospitality services in industry, totally different from real estate itself. Of course, you have your father as the way for you to really opportunity over to you to go that way. How do you feel that you get the team built up? Is that the team because you already have worked with people that in your family already, or how do you sort out a partnership into a team to build together? That step you take from your experience.
So, I've done both deals, right? Like I've had partners where I go and find partners and then, and then I have the office now. So I have, employees under me, right? And so from that fact, it just goes to, there's both different models, right? I'm fine having the payroll, right? Where I have a team that helps us focus. And now we have a team that helps us from the property side. And now we have property management because we manage, maybe 300 something units out of the office now too. Right. So the question being is that in terms of the energy from the family, I went out and did this on my own. And what's been cool is that, now as we've gotten, we've actually helped my dad get to retirement. Now he can just go and do, dad stuff, like be a grandpa and stuff. But then my little brother, who is a wizard in all things construction, right? He now works for me. So he helps me on the asset management side, property side. So he does a ton on that side right there. So the goal is, and I think the question about, I was right, is that how to form the right partnerships is that partnerships typically have to be something that can serve both parties, right? You want to say that how can we both have a common goal, but both have different roles that can be beneficial to the partnership. Usually with partners, we just say, hey, listen, you're my friend, I'm your friend, and like, let's just go be a partnership. And what that usually leads to is lack of fulfillment because usually you're friends because you're like kind and maybe you're both good at marketing or you're both good at lead generation, but nobody's good at the underwriting, right? Or nobody's good at, the asset management, right? So you're missing that key piece. So you want to make sure you have like kind goals, have knowledge about what you want to accomplish, and then have the opportunity that you have fulfilling roles that pair side by side.
For the first time when you get out there and looking for the partner, talking, networking, get together and have financial role or the outlook different and understand each other role into it. You feel heavily depend on their expertise, on the trust that you have for them.
So it's a double-sided question, right? Because I guess in that same part, you have to learn each other. And you have to ask yourself, why do you need a partner to start too? You don't have to have a partner for the sake of having a partner, right? But it just goes where you want to go. Like if Peely and I just did out 1 property or 2 properties, we could have just done it themselves, right? We could just done them first ourselves, right? And then, but in the same part, as we wanted to grow, we had to find new partnerships. So we came from referrals from our network, from other people, right? Then you can go as far as to say, okay, what is your interest and what do you want to do? And so for us, if we had a partner that only wanted to be in a deal for a year and we're doing a 7-year hold, it's probably not going to be like kind of interest. So we want to ask them, like, what are their goals? And then from that part, who have they worked with in the past? Like if they have referrals, right? Like who are some other people that you've worked with successfully, right? Like, why do you want a partner? You can put it back on them. Like, what is your energy to be a partner with us? Because you want to make sure that you're not seeking a partner just for the sake of partnership, but the partnership is something you're going to grow into.
Thank you. I think that most for me to feel that way, to build a team, someone to lean on, and you trust in them, and to build a relationship, it takes time for that, not just, and the time to take time, what you do really, you have to be something for you to have a cash flow in your income to build that on the side too. But you can have this, like, I'm going to multifamily and that's what I go to, then during the time could be one deal for a whole year. What you do in that year, have an income to do that, support you to do that, right? To have your
and so you
partner
start
go out.
partnerships slowly, because you, like, I wouldn't say that the first partnership, like if you're going to go do a syndication, you might not be forming your company and going out there, you're both learning the parts. Maybe you're going to learn each other's role as you do one project together and see how you like working together as you continue to grow forward. You know, I've been lucky enough that we've found some great partners here that when we do properties here in Middle Tennessee, Peely and myself and 2 other partners who are a partner in the mastermind, we are the ones who partner together. We each know our roles, right? We each know where we bring value, and then we each stay in our lanes, and that allows us to be successful, right? But I actually found the partner, the third partner, through our partner at the mastermind, right? So we were able to come through someone who was already our warm friend right there into that connection right there. So typically that part is learning people, learning what they're working on, learning in their experiences, learning about how you jive, right? How you have synergy, right? You're going to know, at least in the start, do you like this person, right? Can you see your person working with, like, a question you can ask is, can I see myself working with this person for 5 or 7 or 10 years? Because that's how long these investments can be. And if you have cause for that, then you maybe want to put hesitation to going into that, because it's a long time, right? And so you know, and you will have ups and downs in these projects, and you want to make sure they're going to be there with you, right, for the course of this route. And a simple fact, I always say, if you're having hesitation about someone, especially if you're like a passive investor, you know, look at their Facebook. If they were, you know, like last month they're in like a Turo, the month before they're a Forex trader, before that they're in crypto, before that in flipping, and every month they jump to some kind of new thing, they may not have the longevity for this type of investment, because you are offering, you know, you're offering a long investment. So you want to make sure they have the bandwidth to stay with you, and you have the energy and the right partner with you that can sustain the challenges that will be ahead.
Well articulated, Van. Thank you so much. Let's
Thank
move
you.
to Andrea here. Let's get you unmuted.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really admire you a lot, especially with the ultra marathoning, the running. I do the same. But I feel like you touched on a very key point about partnerships. And that's part of my 2 questions. First one is, do you key principal or key partner with anyone else's deals? And then the second one is, how were you able to raise the funds? Or what were your fundraising strategies when you first started out in the multifamily space and versus now?
Yeah. So the first part is, we don't do it for anybody who's outside the mastermind, but we also, when we do it for the people that are in the mastermind for the projects, we run the projects. We don't just keep you know, be those. We come in and handle and assist on the asset management, right? So they come in side by side, run asset management with us, so they get the learning phase. Because the goal with this is that we welcome that within the mastermind, but it's not a requirement, right? So, okay, cool. If we can be a partner, we can be a value, great. You know, we'll help with the deals and help run the deals, but we want them to go out there and be successful. So like the group that did like 650 units, like we came on or a partner for one of their early deals, and now they're out there doing it themselves. Great. Crush it. You know, like that's the goal with the mastermind. It's not for us to be a partner on the deals. It's for us to help them with some of the steps that we've learned along the way to cut out really the in-between, right? And in terms of raising money, it was just go out to your network and let them know what you're doing. Sometimes it's a lot simpler than we want it to be, is that nobody knows what you're doing if you don't tell them. And so, you know, I was in New York City, so I had a lot of friends in, like, you know, financial world, business world. So I just went and just started talking to everybody and started making a list. And the same thing today, right? We have a lot of energy going out between the podcast, between the mastermind, between our network, but we're constantly putting the word out there. We're always talking to people and educating them. And Peely is constantly in front of people to explain what we're doing, because it doesn't have to be right now, but it could be at some point that this might be the right opportunity for them. So, you know, we've had investors that, you know, funny enough, I had a friend that, I've been seeing since college, 18, 19, 20 years ago, right? And he invested a couple months back. I literally hadn't talked to him. He's like, oh, I've been watching you doing for a couple years now. And like, hey, you have something to invest like out there? I was like, yeah, like here, take a look and see if this works for you. Right. And he invested. Well, that's because we've been putting the energy out there to continue to talk about what we're doing. And it didn't have to be the right time now for us, but it was the right time now for him.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea. Really great question. All right, Freddie, let's get you unmuted, and then Alana will be our last one.
This is awesome, Jason. This is all great information. My question is, I've been coming across some brokers that their OMs are either incorrect, some of the information's off, or they're a bit lazy, or they don't get back to me, but they have really good listings for whatever reason, right? So how do you deal with that? And how do you just kind of separate yourself from others so that you can get like those pocket listings eventually, or just get like on their list to get, listings right away? Like, how do you approach that?
Well, you can only control what you say and what you're going to do, right? And so that's what you can do to the broker is that, you hear from brokers a lot like, oh, I get 30 calls a day, and of those 30 calls, I'll never hear from like 29 of them again, right? So to be the person that follows up, right? Even if they send you a bad deal, or like you could be like, hey, I want only 50 unit properties. And then the next day they send you a 6 unit. Like, I appreciate you sending this to me. It looks like this is a good deal. Here's some of the key points, but again, I want to focus on the 50 units. Or if you get a deal and it doesn't work, don't go radio silent. Respond back to the data points. But like, listen, here's what I see. Like this is what we come up with. This doesn't work for us for these reasons. We're kind of this part. Anything I'm missing, right? So continue to carry the conversation further, so you can make more of a connection. They can see you're putting in the energy and the effort. That will build it over time. Right, that would definitely build it over time, where in fact, most of the times you get a deal from someone and then they just never hear back, right? They're like, oh, and I guess whatever. So respond at any point and keep the conversation moving forward. Now, the data could be wrong, might be wrong, who knows, right? But it also might be the data that's provided to them, but just ask them. Like, I just usually just bring it back up to them like, hey, it looks like this. And am I missing something? Like, oh yeah, there's a story behind that. Or, oh, thanks for pointing that out, right? That's just going to happen. But it's just like our underwriting, right? So data in, it's got to be good data come in to get good outputs, right? And so for us, we typically just go back and ask the questions. And instead of asking one question at a time, I'd like to make like a list of questions, right? Oh, here's my 6 questions. So I go back and I'm like, here's my 6 questions. Hey, I'm happy to jump on a call if that's easier, or, here you go, right? And then look how you usually respond with your brokers. I have brokers that, are email people. I have brokers that are phone calls. I have brokers that are text people, right? And so just find your rotation of how you connect with your people and how you communicate to keep carrying it forward. So I would just think reps and follow-up. And if you do that, you will definitely continue to get on the short list. And it's also, funny enough, timing, because you do want to keep in front of them and keep a time of like every 3 weeks, I'll follow up. And you can say to them like, hey, listen, I know you don't have anything on your plate right now, but you cool if I just follow up with you in like 3 weeks? Because you might just be, top of mind because you just followed up with them. And that might be how you get in front of something that just popped up on their plate.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
You got it.
Alana, let's get you unmuted. But before we do, Jason, I want to ask, how can we best show our appreciation as a Freedom Chasers community to you taking time away from your family and spending it with us this evening? I mean, is it an Instagram post? Is it, something on LinkedIn? How can we show our appreciation to you?
So, we just recently launched the Live 100 podcast. So I'll do one better, right? So if you go on Live 100, right, and give a listen, right, and if you like it, give me an honest rating and review. And if you screenshot that and just text it or send it to me on Instagram, I'll do a quick 10-minute strategy call with you for that part. For that,
wow,
you do that part.
Oh,
So, but you have to be on Instagram. I guess it has some magical world, but most I think they have 4 billion of 8 billion people in the world are. So I think, we probably hit most in this part. If you do that, but there's that part. And if you don't like the podcast, that's cool too. I welcome any honest review.
That's extremely generous. And speaking of Instagram, I have my phone here ready. I would encourage everybody to take your phone out as well. Take a picture, take a screenshot. I'm going to do mine on 3 here. 1, 2, 3. And Jason, I'll be sure to tag you and leave you a kind note, but that's very generous of you. Thank you so much for extending that invitation to the Freedom Chasers community. Okay, Alana, let's get you. Yeah, you were unmuted and fire your question away. You are last,
Okay.
but not least.
Oh yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. This has been really invaluable. I love like all the business advice. It's been really like clear cut and straightforward. So I really appreciate that. I have a couple questions. One was, do you still recommend Louisville as a market for multifamily? Because you're
So I moved out of Louisville. We had our deals and we had like 400 plus units we all sold. And reason we moved out, I was in the south side and we were having trouble during COVID with them. It was just like the cyclical process that they just kept offering assistance money to tenants. And so tenants weren't highly motivated to go out there and work. And what that led is we also on the other side of it, we had a hard time because of just people not wanting to work, finding good maintenance people for the properties. And so it started to create operational challenges, and we had already created so much value and we were going to exit at such a good point that I was like, okay, let's exit out of this market and move into another market. Noting Louisville, I really do still like the market, but if I was to go back and engage in that market, I would look and focus on different areas, most notably the East. It's a higher price point market, but also has really a better aptitude from everything from schools to jobs to just the area. So I would move back and go back to the East. Nothing against the South and South Central, but I think the value today stands in the East.
Okay, that's really helpful. I've had my eye on that area. And then the other part was, okay, when you were starting, I love the part where you're like, we just created a cut sheet. I'm going to actually take that information and knowledge and like do that for myself, create the cut sheet and just send it off to different brokers, different people who might be interested. Did you were you the leader of your team? Were you the one pulling in your team, or did you go and join like other people?
Yeah,
And,
we've
like-
driven them all. So Peely and I have been the front runners on all the projects. So as we've come into having some partnerships, it's been people on us, but we haven't. I'll take that back. There was 2 projects that we were a secondary partner on a couple years ago. But pretty much every project from there, from the start, and then pretty much anything forward since about 2019, we've been the driver on.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Good
I'm
question.
honest. Thank you so much. Freedom Chasers, I dropped Jason's Instagram in the chat. I dropped his Live 100 podcast in the chat. Remember, he said, take a listen for the podcast, leave an honest review, take a screenshot, DM him on Instagram, and he will provide to you a 10-minute strategy call. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Jason, this has been phenomenal tonight. The amount of information that you conveyed to the community was so valuable. And
Mind blowing.
The only thing is just our time runs out way too fast. But it was a real pleasure having you on tonight. It's Peely, right? Who's your better half?
It's absolutely
Peely.
the better half. Yes.
Tell Peely, thank you so much for letting us have you for the evening, and the kiddos as well. And it was a real pleasure to have you on with the Freedom Chasers tonight.
Thank you for having me. Good
Yeah.
Let's
question.
get some fires in the chat, y'all. Let's get